I used to work with these two people, Nicole Comerford and Clare Starling, co-founders of Sanctum Sports Management. Good morning, Clare. Good morning, Nicole.
Morning, Neil.
Good morning.
Hey.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. I think I might have pressed a wrong button on the way through, but we have got you. That's important. Thank you very much.
And the other really good thing is we've been able to order 2 pizzas and they're arriving very soon. Sanctum Sports Management, we better start off by finding out a little bit about you two and what led you to doing that. Who's going first?
Let me kick off. I'll start. It's Clare here, Neil. And I heard you say it's, 11 a.m. here. It's actually 9 a.m. in
Yeah, no, I know. I was trying to translate it thinking it's 10 o'clock, so therefore it's 11 o'clock. It's Saturday morning, all right? I had 1 cup of coffee. Give me a break.
We love daylight saving.
It wasn't Compost brand either, Claire, and you know what I mean.
Gosh. Yeah, we have a history with Compost brand, Neil and I, but no, it is 9 a.m. Neil up here in
Correct.
And Nicole and I are enjoying the Saturday morning latte in the yard, so.
Nice. And it's, 1987 as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us your background, you guys.
Yeah, so let me give you a bit of background. First of all, Rob, Neil, thank you for having us, both of us. So Nicole and I, we have a long sort of strong commercial background spanning media and sport. Myself in media, so I've spent 23 years at News Corp, which, some could say is a lifetime. It pretty much is. But
yeah, to do me, I think.
Oh, I know, right? But look, I think news is such a broad and dynamic business that there's lots of different facets to it, so you don't feel like you've been that long. Nicole was with News Corp for 13 years, so we worked together for quite a long time over that period, and we've done a lot in terms of strategic commercial partnerships. We did a lot of audience growth and engagement work. We were, innovators in technology. We ran a multi-year capital investment. We restructured News Corp several times. We had a hand in that in the strategic transformations. So really, if you can summarise all of that, it's we have this brand, management experience. We have this commercialisation of products. We have PR marketing, and we have this audience growth. And when we were at News, we were really having this front row seat to looking at the growth of female sport. So, not just obviously the growth of the actual sport, but the viewership and the audiences and the interest that they have. That caught our eye, and Nicole also led our partnerships team at News Corp. So we would probably deal with about 2,000 customers at News. We would probably get between 50 to 80 briefs a week. They would range, from 5 to 3 million, and a lot of those briefs were wanting talent. I think about 25% of those briefs wanted us to answer the talent question as well, and it was something we never did well, particularly talent in female athletes, as we saw a bit of a shift away from investment into male athletes and also influencers. So we were seeing this sort of a swivel chair approach of this growth, and we were seeing briefs be unanswered because people weren't able to connect with female athletes. And Nicole and I decided that, we talked about it a bit, and it was super interesting, Neil, because people would say to us, you can't go into sports management, guys. You don't have a legal or an accounting background. And it was at that point Nicole and I went, okay, well, we have brand management, commercialisation, PR marketing. I think we need to really reimagine the modern athlete management. And we need to really sort of start to handle the inequities that are in, the income and opportunities that are there for female athletes. So ISM was born in Sanctum.
There you go. So you touched on there the talent question, and it's a bit of a thing in my head that if I'm watching, and I'm talking AFL or AFLW football, at the end of the game, they interview the same people every time. So you've got such a limited pool of people to deal with. Does the limited pool drive the fact that no one knows the others, or because no one knows the others, it drives the talent pool? Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I think both Nicole and I would have an interesting view on this. So, but I would say that there's not enough media coverage, and you're right, the same people, we go to the same people and we have the same conversations, and I think that we have to do better as a media landscape to add some diverse stories to the female talent pool in all sports, not just AFL, but in several of them. So I think we do go to the same people, but we need to start going to a more diverse array, because they're very different. So and there's lots of different stories to be told in that, and I think that's what will start to inspire a lot more engagement in the sport itself, but also share those stories. They've got amazing stories. So, yeah, I think it is definitely about not going to the same people because they're trusted and tested and whatever, but certainly starting to be a bit more diverse in the opinions of those women.
The world of sport has changed a lot, and money, which is my pet hate about there being that I'm very old and lived in a completely different world.
And when he says very old,
I mean very old. So we're just seeing so many cases now where I see money is driving the decision-making process, sometimes totally, and it's affecting people's lives. Clubs want to fit a certain number into a salary cap, so they've got restrictions. Sports management are looking after sometimes the best interests of the player, but of course when there is the known factor that they're getting a percentage of what their representative player is getting, maybe their motivation is not always what's the best place for my player to be, but how much money are they going to make. All these things get very murky and ugly, and for an old-fashioned chap looking on, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. How are you inside managing the conundrum you would have is, we're going to make a quid out of this, but also Sally or Samantha's best interest we need to take into consideration?
Can I step back, Rob, and tell you about Inner Sanctum? Can I get Nicole to just jump in and explain Inner Sanctum? And then can I come back to that question? Because
please do.
I mean, the duty to manage athletes is one of, super important. And I think that anyone, you're right, this industry has a bit of a dirty name attached to it, I'm afraid. Like I didn't realise that, and I've only been in the sports ecosystem for about 9 months, if I'm honest. I've got a business and commercial background, and I'm seeing exactly the same thing. So there's a lot to that. But can I just step back and tell you why Inner Sanctum's a little different? And maybe if Nicole can jump in, tell us, talk to us about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then I'll come back to that question, if that's all right, Rob.
Perfect.
We've got guests directing the conversations now. What's going on?
I love it.
Unbelievable. I knew I'd have trouble with these two.
It's women, right?
No, I'm not saying that. No, I've got to go home to one.
Thanks, gents. Look, I think as Claire touched on, Inner Sanctum, I'm going to say was born out of observation and frustration. So when we started this journey, I like to consider it was the typical Jerry Maguire sports management approach that we were building. But very quickly, in a short period of time, we realised the needs of the athlete were not about just contracting needs. It was about building a social profile for them to engage with their own ecosystems. They needed to understand what a social strategy was, how to build it, how to build content and how to implement it. And then they also needed to understand that they're a brand, right? They're a product, they need to be marketed. There's a PR and comm strategy that needs to be put around that. So in any athlete's world, they have a manager, and then they've got to go to a social team, and then they've got to go to a communication PR team, and that doesn't work, and it becomes even harder when you're female athletes. So we kind of envisage smashing all that together into broader than just flipping the ticket, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of where we started and how we've started to build what we consider the first pillar of our business. But there's two other pillars that are just as important, and the second pillar is about being that connected tissue between brands and athletes, because like we rightly saw at News Corp and we see across the board, a lot of money is going to the same athletes, or you just can't even find the right athletes that meet the brief. So we've made a commitment to brands that we can serve up vetted athletes within a period of time, and be that easy connected tissue. But even while we were doing that, the joy of being a startup and running at pace is that we realised that brands are still probably a lot behind the eight ball. They still need to understand the value of investing in women, and then how to actually build a strategy around that. So then became the third pillar, which is where we're spending a lot of time, which is the advocacy space. So we've got to change the narrative from just being the need to invest in women's sport, and actually providing quality data to say this is why you need to invest in women's sport, and then this is how you do it. And it's got to be targeted CMOs, because it's CMOs and CFOs, they're the only ones that are going to change their marketing strategy and pivot investment into female sport and female athletes. So I think back to your original question, how do you feel about, flipping the ticket? To us, it's far broader than that. There's meaning in our name. It was really important that when we developed Inner Sanctum, we were speaking a language to athletes. Every athlete knows what their Inner Sanctum is. We're that other Inner Sanctum when you step off the field. And in that Inner Sanctum, we're more than clipping tickets. We're about building you now and for the future. We're about putting $1 in your pocket, and we have a responsibility to inform and educate corporate Australia on the why and the how, and to do it now.
And there's a subtle difference, of course, too, in the athlete's sport, because if you're doing this job for a tennis player or a golfer, it's a completely different model than someone who's maybe playing for Geelong in the Australian Football League women's section, where there's a team focus and a team brand that you're attaching your athlete to, as opposed to this freewheeling individual who's going to maximise all of their skills and talent and sell themselves as an extra money-making process. So two different types, which I imagine changes the strategy that you have inside your model.
Every athlete is different. I mean, we've got Olympians from a team sport, medalists from Paris. We've got individual sports from boxing to, triathlon to off-road. We've got a real blend of athletes. So, they are very different to what we consider our broadcast code sports, like the NRL, your AFL, your cricket, your netball, right? They have contracts with their governing bodies and they are paid a salary. My triathlete is not paid a salary. She's world champion for Australia.
Yeah, so, different type of thing. And I'll go back to, and I think Neil's Footy Club in Brisbane and mine in Geelong have certainly had cases where players have chosen to stay for less money because they feel that team environment is better for their brand than chasing $1. And this is where the advice that management comes in behind that would probably need to be really, really aware of, rather than taking that extra clip for themselves on the way through.
Well, we were hearing yesterday that women, the participation for young girls or women into the pipeline of sport is a very different attraction, and therefore, you have to be aware of why they go there, the social element, the health element, the community element, the connection element. We're hearing that women's motivations are different in what they want to do. So to that point, you do need strong and guidance that is about what they want to do. It's not just about money. They have a different value proposition.
Just going back to your observation, and I'm only using names for illustrative purposes, you understand here. And let's talk about individual athletes, Olympic swimmers. If I'm a brand who thinks I would really like to invest some money in a female Olympic swimmer to go with my brand, is there a stumbling point here that says, well, if I don't go for Emma McEwen or Ariana Titmus and I go for the person who's the reserve swimmer in the 4x100 relay, it's devaluing my brand because I haven't gone after the champion? Do you know what I mean? Is that part of the stumbling point we have with diversity?
Look, I think with some strategies it might be, but to be really frank, every brand and every CMO, they all have their own strategy and their own approach. Some brands want to start at the start line with young athletes and grow with them. That might be their objective. Others might want, they may want to be associated with the more profile athletes. But it comes down to the individual brand and their objectives. So I wouldn't say it's a blanket across the board. I see a lot of good brands investing in young athletes that are not necessarily known yet, but they believe in them and they want to be on their journey from the beginning. And that's really powerful. And I think for Clare and I, we love any connection, but, sustainability and longevity is, we see really rewarding in those partners that play a different game.
I would say, though, Neil, there is a bit of an obsession for gold medalists, not silver, not bronze. Unique stories that got there, but there is definitely, momentum around gold only, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different parallel, but I can remember back in my olden days when I used to work a lot of time in regional Australia, John Laws used to have his car serviced in about 173 different places around Australia because it was really important to be associated with the most successful voice on radio. No one was going to get two hacks from Geelong and say, "Where do you get your car serviced?" And I think it's
Cullinan Motors, by the way.
Cullinan Motors, who are sponsors of this program. But to me, it's that whole, I want to be, if I don't go for the absolute success and gold medal, it doesn't get much more successful, does it? Then am I saying, well, I can't afford them, or my business isn't associated? That to me is one of the great dilemmas.
I bring it back to every brand is trying to engage with an audience that changes perception of their brand or around their brand. Not every athlete talks to every brand's audience. So it does come down to the individual marketing objectives. Some will, as I say, just run to the gold medalist. But those that are smart and those that just want a slightly different, growth partnership, you will see them move to some of the up-and-coming athletes. And in many facts, you and me and Clare and everyone on the call, they may not necessarily see those investments. They're happening, and we have to acknowledge that and thank corporate Australia for the ones that are doing that.
Yeah, and I come back, Neil, to the point that Nicole made about why Sanctum's doing what it's doing in the advocacy space.
Easy for you to say.
Well, it wasn't, evidently. But we are seeing, Nicole and I go to events and, we hear a lot about the need to invest in women's sport and brands changing their mind and all of those things, but we really don't have the data. We're seeing that, yes, you have to, but we don't want to move too far in the charitable space for female athletes because it is actually good business. And, there's a lot of stats that we've seen and know that, when we're talking to brands at the moment, they need a reason, to Nicole's point, where they're finding an audience, they're engaging with a different type of audience, but they still need to understand that they're returning. And women's sport returns $7.39 to the dollar investment, right? So what we're also trying to do is convince and talk to those brands and educate those brands about not just the why you should do it, but the how to do it and the returns that they will get. And moving away from this conversation that it's a charity and it's something you should do to feel good about yourself, it's actually really, really good business. So we've been on this bandwagon to be able to try and do that as well. So I think that there are a lot of great case studies, NAB and CommBank and the women's cricket team and Cadbury and several others I could probably name doing an amazing job at starting to tap into this space because they realise it is also an undervalued asset. It's not just about, being charitable, right?
The other interesting aspect that's happening now sometimes to our great disappointment is the other end of the scale where a sportsman's coming out of their sports person is coming out of their career actively and then looking to go into the media. Now some, I suppose, the management and the individual are driving that, but sometimes it's the media organisations that want the high profile person on their brand. They want them in their team for their own marketing purposes, and sometimes the former athlete isn't measuring up, and it's a really interesting for a viewer. It can be quite uncomfortable to see someone, although high profile and an interesting lifestyle, maybe their new career in media isn't suiting them, but still we on the outside have to put up with it. That's an interesting part of the future and a new part for management to deal with going forward.
Yeah, and we do a lot of that. I'll give you some examples, and I'll also throw to Nicole because I think, part of what Nicole said was about observation and frustration, right? We see and have seen, we're going to call them code sports, so I digress for a minute, Rob, bear with me, but the code sports, when you're talking about NRLW or AFLW players, we've observed these women who have to hold down two jobs. They have to hold down, playing and training schedules often at night. They have to promote themselves, promote the sport. They have to negotiate 20 weeks leave if they're getting in any kind of national game or what have you. We're seeing these, and then we're seeing the stories of we're seeing the stories of the young women who are doing endorsement deals for vouchers, and sadly, Nicole and I have observed that they think that that's their worth, not necessarily. So my point is we're seeing 20-year-old, young, emerging, incredibly talented women sit at a table and first of all, be told what their value is, not kind of understand it, and they need someone in their corner to help them do that. But they also don't have the perspective of what they should be thinking about post-game, post-career, post-athletics. So, we do a lot of work with our athletes to sort of talk about what are you passionate about, what do you love, we've got athletes that we're supporting right now in, delivering shop fronts because I think they've got a passion for writing or health, and they want to write a health book or a children's book it's a really, it's absolutely part of the conversations you need to have when you just deeply care about people and you see, when you were younger, you wish you'd had the same advice. Nick, do you want to talk about any examples we've got of our girls and how we're translating that?
Yeah, and I'll start by saying it's often quite uncomfortable to talk to an athlete about their post-athletic career. No athlete actually wants to think that far ahead, but it's our responsibility to start that conversation. So, we're talking to an 18-year-old at the moment. She's at uni. She's absolutely not thinking past probably 30, and so shouldn't. But, she's in a beautiful situation at the moment where she's a really good storyteller. She likes writing. So we've said to her to start capturing some of the cultural elements of what she's been exposed to where she is currently, because then post-career or even later in her career, could be in her late 20s, she can start to write a children's book. And, when we planted that seed with her, she was just like, oh, I never thought of that. So with her, she's starting to write things and she's got a blend of, 3 different cultures that she's immersed herself in at the moment. So I said, write about what you're seeing and feeling. We've got other athletes that have got full-time jobs and obviously can compete on the international stage, but we're, looking at opportunities. They're quite passionate about talking about high performance and the capacity and the journey one takes. So we're looking at, broadcasting opportunities for her, and we're getting her involved in broadcasting to give her options. So when she does retire and she has that full-time job, is that what she wants to do? Or does she want to do that with something else that really drives her passion around talking about, giving her a platform to talk about high performance?
Yeah, well, I think this is the key element that you provide and the good sporting clubs provide. Certainly our Geelong Football Club in here are famous now for making sure that when the 18-year-olds arrive at the club, they are already thinking about what is life going to be like as a 35-year-old. We need to prepare you for it, and they're successfully doing that, and that's the new wave. So I congratulate you two on doing the same thing with your stable as well, because it is important. There's so many horror stories of people dropping off when their magic world of sport finishes, and sometimes abruptly. What's next? And many don't know.
Now, we have run out of time, but you know what? I'm going to make a commitment right here on the radio that Claire, Nicole, we are going to get you back in the new year and chat more about how your team is going in terms of the vision, but also other issues that come up in the meantime, if that's okay with you guys.
Love to.
Love what you do. It really, really is an important part of the modern athletic and sporting world. So well done.
Sure. Thank you for having us.
We'll chat soon. Clare Starling and Nicole Comerford, co-founders in Sanctum Sports Management. See you soon.